All right, Chevra. It's another evening of Tanya. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nהיה b'dvaroi. Thank you to Shlomo for sponsoring. Lili Nishmat, your father. Yaakov ben Rahim is still in the year of mourning. Can I say something about you? Quickly? Okay. Shlomo is many things. He's a very special man. He's a very, how do you say, like a core member of the community. Comes out every day to the prayers, 3 times a day. And he has one big passion. One big passion of Shlomo is not talking during davening. That's a big thing. Yeah, it's a halacha. That's true. But unfortunately, not everybody keeps the halacha. So, in honor of your sponsorship, everybody should take on to speak a little bit less during the davening. Find the time.
You didn't invite me
Not at all, he says.
Baby step.
They go all or nothing. Not at all. Or baby steps. Baby steps. Okay, a little bit. If you speak 100 words, speak 1 word. 90 words. Wow. Welcome. Okay?
And hopefully, totally.
And then in the end, we hopefully get to a place where we're not speaking at all during davening, because that's what it is. In truth, davening is a meeting between us and Hashem. It's like, imagine you got a one-time meeting with the CEO of a great company to pitch your product. You're not going to go speaking to somebody else, right? It's direct access to the Creator and the Supreme Master of all that exists. So that's my message on behalf of you today.
Thank you.
All right. We're in a very special month. It's the month of Iyar. It's the only month in the Jewish calendar where every day there's a unique mitzvah. Of course, every day we have many mitzvahs. You've got to put on tefillin every day. But as far as a unique mitzvah goes, this is the only month that has a special unique mitzvah every day of the month. Which mitzvah is that? Counting the Omer. Exactly. We start on Pesach, so we have half of the month of Nisan. We end on Shavuot, so we have a couple of days into the month of Sivan. But Iyar has got every single day counting the Omer. And it's a weird concept if you think about it. You can count products, but counting time seems meaningless. Right? If a person wants to take inventory of how many things he has left in his store, so he knows how much more to order, you can count. You can also measure space to see how much you can fit. Right? You need to bring in a new piece of furniture, so you measure the space in your room and you see how much space do I have, can I stretch it, can I fit it, it's not going to fit. But time is seemingly, it's not elastic. Time is time. You can't stretch more minutes into an hour. You can't stretch more hours into a day. You can't take away the amount of hours in a day or the amount of minutes in an hour. So what's the idea of counting days? Counting time. So of course the simple answer is we're counting down to the giving of the Torah. It's like you're coming to an exciting trip. You count down to your vacation. But I saw today in a letter that the Rebbe wrote in English. By the way, many people don't know. The Rebbe has thousands. The estimation is over 10,000 English letters. You don't need to know Hebrew or Yiddish to access the Rebbe's teachings in the original. You also have that. He has got almost 200 volumes now of published work in Hebrew. But there's a whole genre of the Rebbe's teachings that was printed in the original in English. Letters that were sent out, messages or bulletins that were sent to the newspapers before every holiday. And literally, it's the Rebbe's words. He edited them in English. It's full-on English Torah of the Rebbe. They have an app, by the way, if I can plug it. They have an app, it's called Rebbe Responsa. Rebbe Responsa, you can download it onto your phone. And it has a database right now, they're holding about 5,100 letters. They update it constantly as people give in their collections of private letters. You know, you delete all the private information, you delete the name, you delete the place, but the content of the letter is timeless and eternal. And so you can literally, and it's divided by topic, by date, by time. You can check out all kinds of things. And yeah, there you have it right there. That's it. That's exactly it. Download it. There you go. It's an app. Unfortunately, it's not in website format, so you have to have the app in order to access it. But I believe it's available on both Android and Apple. And it has, literally, it's the Rebbe talking to you in English. Anyway, the Rebbe writes in this letter that contrary to what people think, time is what you make of it. And with the right attitude, it's possible to elasticize time, Today we understand this more with Einstein and his revolutionary theories in which everything is a conversion of time and space. And there's an element if you succeed in utilizing time, that you can do more in an hour than another person who's not as focused can do. And it has to do with the way you align yourself. When you're aligned with the core of the universe, there's a way for you to make more, literally, of the seconds granted us. And that's the message of counting time. It's the Jew's calling to get into a space. Today is 1 day of the Omer. Today is 2 days. I'm not going to say what tonight is because we still have to count after the class. But last night was 22 days. And by counting the day, we invest it with a holy energy that allows us to make the most of that day. And that's the month of Iyar is all about. Making the most during this month, so we do it all year round as well. There's a story in the Talmud, Tractate Bava Basra. The Talmud talks about a man whose name was Yosef, the son of Rabbi Yehoshua. Yosef, the son of Rabbi Yehoshua, got sick. And he was confined to bed. And unfortunately, he had what we would call a near-death experience. Talmud describes that as his spirit left his body and went into basically a coma, as we know it today. Thank God he came to. He was revived. And when he woke up, his father, Rabbi Yehoshua, was sitting by the bed, and he said, Yosef, my son, tell me what you saw. What did you see? So he said, Dad, Olam hafuch ra'iti. I saw an upside down world. Elyonim lemata, tachtonim lemala. Those who are elevated in this world were castigated in that world, and those who are lowly in this world were celebrated in that world. Rashi interprets it as referring to literally people in different social standings. Rich people and poor people. The rich people who everybody looks up to today and respects them, so to speak, for their money, were not respected in the next world. And the poor, who people kind of looked at them as worthless and low lives, they were celebrated. Upside down world. Says Rabbi Yehoshua to Yosef his son, no. Olam barur ra'ita. You saw a clear world. This is the upside down world. You got a glimpse of reality for what it truly is. The experience that we have, that's a little bit twisted. And that's my opener for tonight. Finishing chapter 6. We've had 2 classes. We're going to a 3rd class, concluding class of this chapter. In the larger picture, we're exploring the human condition. We want to understand what's at the core of the Jew. At the core of the Jew, the Alter Rebbe told us, are 2 souls. There's a divine soul and an animal soul. The godly soul, we spent a lot of time on it. We're done for the meantime. Now we're diving into the animal soul. And the animal soul in the human is the mirror image of the animal reality in the world at large. In other words, the human being is a microcosm of what exists in the macro on the universal level. So if you say the human being has a divine soul, that means the world is pumping with a divine soul. There's a divine element of reality. When you say the human being has an animal soul, that means there's a mirror energy of animalistic parts of reality. And so in defining the animal soul, the Alter Rebbe kind of zoomed out and defined reality in 2 parts. Last week we defined the word holy. Kedusha. Kedusha was defined by the Alter Rebbe as anything which submits to God. If you're God-centered, not self-centered, you're holy. Just because you're a hermit doesn't make you holy. You could be an egotistical hermit. You could be a selfish hermit. You could be after fame of one sort or another. Holiness means submitted to God. Bittul is the Hebrew word for that. On the flip side, the Alter Rebbe just said, if you're not holy, you're unholy. There's only 2 sides to the arena. No 3 sides. There's no such thing as neutral. If you're not with God, you're godless. But he didn't define it. He defined holy, and he said whatever's outside of it is unholy. Now he turns to defining the unholy. And defining the unholy, surprisingly, in the Tanya, takes up 2.5 chapters. Spends a lot of time defining the unholy because it's the unholy which we experience. Every day, that's what we live. In temple times, maybe they experienced godliness in that kind of a way, where it was like apparent and just out in the open, you couldn't miss it. Today's day and age, it's a concealed reality, the upside down world. And in defining the unholy, the Alter Rebbe introduces a word, a Hebrew word, which we're going to come across time and time again. And it's a great word because it really encapsulates the mystical approach to unholiness, how Kabbalah and how Hasidism views unholiness. Here's the word. Remember this word. It's going to come up again and again. The word is klipa. Klipa. Some of you might remember it from the last round. Klipa. Klipa is a Hebrew word which means peel, or shell, or husk. And peel is the best word that mysticism has to define the unholy. Why? Why is peel the best word? So we have to define a peel. What's a peel?
Because it insulates you from God.
It insulates you from God. So peel is the metaphor because peel insulates. What's the metaphor? Peel insulates a fruit from what? From bugs. It protects. If anything, the peel protects. Huh? It doesn't get eaten, it gets thrown away. Why is peel the metaphor for the unholy sources? Says the Arizal in Kabbalah. It says, what's a peel? A peel does two things simultaneously. First of all, it locks access to the fruit inside it. It doesn't let you get to what's inside. It covers the fruit. At the same time, it also protects the fruit. If not for the peel, the fruit would be exposed to the elements, bugs, all kinds of wonderful things, and it would die. Now, if there's a peel, it's safe. When you need the fruit, when it's time to eat the apple or the orange or the banana, the peel understands, and it says, okay, now it's time to eat the fruit. Take me off, throw me away, my job is done. So in the course of its lifetime, the peel is occupied with covering the real thing. But it knows that the purpose of its covering is for an ultimate good purpose, at which time it steps aside and allows the person to enjoy the fruit. In other words, it serves the fruit. In the original model of reality, the way Hashem created the world, there was a fruit and there was a peel. There was different types of forces. There was the real thing, and then there was also the protector. Forces that concealed the full truth, like the peel locks away access to the fruit, but concealing with a purpose. Maybe the godly light is too strong in certain parts of reality, so you got to tone it down. You can't drive in the sun without sunglasses. It's not trying to darken the sun, it's just trying to protect your eyes. Or other reasons, many other reasons why there could be a peel necessary to the fruit. But in the original intent of God's creation of the world, that's how it was supposed to be. Sometimes there's time for a peel, but the peel understands, or the shell understands, or the husk understands that when the person needs to get access to the real deal, my job is over, throw me away, I'm done. The problem is, just about 3 hours into showtime, Adam and Eve made a mistake. It was just like 3-4 hours after they were created. We have record of everything that happened in that Friday of creation. We know what hour, what happened, each thing. Pretty dismal failure. Another whole class, we can talk about that. What's with the mistake of the tree of knowledge? But let's just assume that it was a mistake, okay? It went counter to the original plan. In that moment, the peels got a whole new level of power. Video games, you have to unlock the next level, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes you can't unlock it. Maybe not in the video games, but imagine a video game where the next level can choose to lock you out on its own terms.
That makes sense. It's like with passwords sometimes you get locked out.
Or with a password, exactly. Yeah. Put in the wrong password, your iPhone shuts off. 15 minutes, goodbye. Factory reset. With Adam and Eve feeding in to the force that was opposite of godliness, they invested it with a power, almost an independent power, in which the peel decided, that's it. We're locking access to the fruit. From now on, we're going to do our best to influence every single person that lives in this universe, that all there is the peel. There is no fruit.
In literature, a lot of times, like people talk about peeling back the onion. It's like
yes.
The peel represents like the superficial self that is
exactly
hide from the world, and the truth is when you get past.
Absolutely. Every person has his own peels, and the world also has a peel.
That's why it's an appealing world.
Appealing. As a matter of fact, Alter Rebbe does say in chapter 6 that this is why the world is called in the Zohar the world of Klippa, the world of peel, because it is a peel. Thank God we have the Torah. The Torah gives us, the Torah is like the manual to the video game or whatever, the instruction guide that tells you that there is a way to unlock it, or that there is a fruit in general. Torah reveals that truth to us. But just from the world's perspective, if you were to grow up without it, you could easily be misled that the superficiality and the materialism and the coarseness of this world is all there is. And that is Klippa's stated mission. It's in their charter. That's what they write. We want to make sure that every single person stops believing in the fruit. They only believe in the shell. And that's how, in the Talmud, that story happened. This distorted view of reality, the fact that he saw the clear world and was living in the distorted one, that's because of Klippa. Klippa alters the mind. It's a mind-altering substance. And it alters the mind in a way that it convinces you that there's a whole different version of reality than the truth would have you understand. And that's the unholy. When we say, if you're holy, you're submitted to God, and if you're not holy, if you're not submitted to God, then you're not holy, what that means is you've given in to the peel shell version of reality. And here, there's two arenas. Here, there's two types of klippas. That's why in the end, even according to the Tanya, there are 3 levels on the playing field. I know last week we said it's only 2. And there's no neutral. Either you're in or you're out. But there's 2 types of peel. By the way, like there are 2 types of peel in fruit. This is observable. We can see this stuff in the supermarket. The way he calls it in the Tanya is klipat noga, the shining peel, or the fancy English word is the translucent peel. It allows the light through. And then you have klipot hatmeot, the impure shells, the opaque shells, the tough shells. Think about fruits. Some fruits. Do fruits have a translucent shell? I'm not sure.
Like nectarines and plums.
Some you can eat the peel, and some
You can eat the peel. That's another story. Yeah. Maybe a grape. Maybe a grape is like a translucent type of a shell.
Yeah, definitely.
At least in the early stages, by the way. We just learned in the Rambam a couple of days ago. Oh, no, it's coming up. I was preparing for a couple of days ahead. And the Rambam writes that there is a grape in an early stage of development, you can actually see through its skin to the seed. Maybe you can check it up online and see if it's like even today. But I think that's what it is. So maybe that. Okay? There's a translucent shell. But then you have soft shells, And you have rough shells. Think about a walnut. You gotta crack it open. It's a hard shell. You can't just get in. Coconuts. Oh yeah, that's a whole other type of a shell. There's some rough shells out there. So there's different levels. You know how they say you have good news and bad news, and then most people want to hear the good news first?
No, most people want to hear the bad.
Bad news first?
Well, Jews usually want to hear
It's like the joke of the rabbi who was very terminally ill, and the president of the synagogue came to visit him. You know this joke. He said, Rabbi, I have good news and bad news. What do you want to hear first? He says, here, give me the good news. So the good news is, the board wishes you a speedy recovery. He says, what's the bad news? It was 7-4. A little bit of a delayed reaction there, but that's good. That's good. Okay. Good news and the bad news. So in Klippa, there's the good news and the bad news. The good news is that there's ones with a translucent shell, which is really chapter 7. The Alter Rebbe kind of begins with the bad news. He starts with the worst Klippa. Maybe just to go from the bottom up. I'm not sure why. Cover the extremes. He goes, starts with the bottom. The worst Klippa, the fully impure Klippa, the one that's, the rough, inaccessible, bang your life out shell, before you get into the fruit. It's hinted, it's very interesting, right? It's hinted in one of the most mystical haftorahs that we read in the year. On Shavuot, the day we got the Torah. It's coming up actually, so you can check it out in the Siddur this year if you're in Shul on June 12th. Wednesday, June 12th, that's going to be the day. The haftorah is the first chapter of the book of Ezekiel. Yechezkel, which describes the divine chariot. That's a very, very mystical chapter. And the way that Yechezkel starts the chapter, wow, I opened to the page. I'm not joking, I just did. Wow. Here it is. We're going to read another paragraph soon, but I'm just looking for the quote here. He says, I saw a stormy wind, a great cloud, and a flashing fire approaching me from the north. And the commentaries explain that the north is always a symbolism of the evil forces that wish to destroy the Jewish people, because Babylon was north, still is north to Israel. Modern day Iraq is north to Israel. So north is always, like it says, mitzafon tipatach hara, north is the source of evil. Because I saw these forces coming from the north. So the commentaries say he was seeing the spiritual angels of those neighboring countries coming to destroy the Holy Temple. And then from within there, he saw the vision of God's most mystical chariot. So the Rebbe has a little commentary on the Tanya. He says, you see here that everything negative begins with a positive. There's no such thing that something's completely and wholly evil. Every negative has can be traced back to something good. some redemptive quality, but then in the end it manifests and metamorphoses and mutates into a virus. But the point is that that's where it's described for the first time. These three terminologies, Ruach Se'ara, the stormy wind, Anan Gadol, the great cloud, H Mitlakachat, the flashing fire, cackling fire, are the three, what's called Klipot Hatmeot, the three levels of totally impure Klippa. Why there's three? I'm not sure. I have to look into that. But it's the name of the completely negative reality, the completely opaque shell. The way we're going to define it later in chapter 22, it doesn't just try to conceal the fruit, it actively denies it. One thing is to cover reality. Another thing is to deny reality. So they're God deniers, truth deniers, mis and disinformation in today's lexicon. Okay? And because of this version of the shell, they create all the elements of reality that also deny God's existence. And that's the paragraph I want to read inside with you. If you have the Tanya, I have 2 extra ones here, maybe we can pass them out if someone doesn't have. If you have the Tanya, I want to share one. I don't know who has it, doesn't have. We're going to be looking at page 91. 91. The top paragraph over there, after the first 2 lines, says the Alter Rebbe, these 3 klipos, these 3 forces of shell, I'm not even calling them forces of negativity, I'm calling them forces of shell, because that's what they are. They're reality deniers. They do 3 things. So what do they say here? These 3 klipos, A, metaphysically power the souls and sustain the bodies of all the wicked nations of the world. That's on the human kingdom. You know, everything in the world is divided into 4 kingdoms. There's the human kingdom, the animal kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, and the mineral kingdom, the inanimate kingdom. So the Alter Rebbe references the first 3 kingdoms. He says, the part of the human kingdom that draws its force from the negative shell, the worst shell, is the wicked nations of the world. Or in other manuscripts of the Tanya, the idol-worshipping Gentiles. Because you can have a Gentile who lives in alignment with God's will. Doesn't have 613 commandments, but he has 7 commandments, 7 Noahide laws. Gentile lives in alignment with that. It's good. Idol-worshipping Gentiles means they serve idols. What if the idol, in its most pristine sense, means denying the existence of God? You attribute a power to something other than Hashem. So that's A. In the human kingdom, they are sustaining the souls and the bodies of the nations of the world. B. Produce the souls and sustain the bodies of all impure living creatures that we are prohibited to eat. So all the non-kosher animals, all the non-kosher birds. That's the animal kingdom part that gets their life force, their energy, from the lower level of klipa. They're prohibited to us. We'll talk about that in a minute. And C are the sustenance and life force of all forbidden food in the vegetable kingdom, such as orla, restricted fruit, and kilai hakerem, produce of mixed vegetables and vine seeds. As stated in Eitz Chaim, section 49, chapter 6. Orla is any fruit in its first 3 years of growth. Special halacha, a fruit tree in the first 3 years of growth, you cannot eat it. Additionally, you have what's called kilai hakerem. If, for whatever reason, I don't know if there's any agricultural benefit to it, but if you mix a vegetable seed and a vine seed, a grape seed, together, it's big problems. The growth is forbidden. Literally, the fruit is being powered by forbidden substance. It's an interesting phenomenon. After 3 years, it switches. The battery switches. So in the human kingdom, it's the idol-worshipping Gentiles. The animal kingdom, it's the forbidden animals. In the vegetable kingdom, it's the forbidden fruit. But it has to be things that are like more inherently forbidden. Like the Rebbe writes, for example, chametz on Pesach. During the 8 days of Passover, you can't eat chametz, right? But it's a passing thing. If you sell it right after 8 days, it's all good. So we don't. So the life force doesn't change in that way. It has to be something that's like from the time that it was born, it was forbidden. Notice, by the way, that in the mineral kingdom, there's nothing that's being fed by the worst level of klipa, because nature at its core is godly. It's a very interesting thing. The earth, mountains, the beaches, stones, none of this stuff. There's only one way that you could affect the mineral kingdom in a negative way. Was that if it was designated for idol worship. Yes.
So like alloys are okay if you mix the elements in fruit. Like aluminum isn't in the earth.
Right.
You have to make
Minerals, exactly. Minerals don't have a source of unholiness. They're part of the translucent shell, which we're going to discuss next week. But they power all these things, all these inherently forbidden things they power. Most importantly is the fourth thing. It's the next paragraph. Let's read it inside. And D, the 3 klipos are also the sustenance and life force of every action, spoken word, and thought prohibited by the 365 negative commands and their derivatives, as is explained in Eitz Chaim, end of chapter 5. That's the super important part. Whenever a Jew commits something against God's will, in thought, speech, or action, that thought, speech, or action is being fed by the lowest levels of klipa. The energy that allows you to think, that allows you to speak, that allows you to do, is coming from that level of klipa.
So, you say something, for instance, like what?
Over there, it's anything. You flip a light switch on Shabbos, your hand is being fed. The energy to do that is coming from the lowest level of klipa. You eat non-kosher. What's allowing your jaw and teeth to digest the food is those forces of klipa. It's a very interesting system. The Alter Rebbe is not clear on how it works, but it does. Different energies can be constantly going into your body at different times. You put on tefillin, you got a positive energy. You eat non-kosher, you got a negative energy. You go put up a mezuzah, you got a positive energy. You can switch.
But what happens with the animal soul in relation to the klipa?
So the animal soul is becoming in charge in that moment. When you're being fed by the macro forces of klipa, your animal soul is wearing the pants in the house, so to speak. So, having defined this realm of unholiness, I just want to close with defining our relationship to it. Somebody asked before, everything in the world was created with a purpose. So what does it mean that there are some things that a Jew cannot access or cannot deal with, is prohibited from partaking with? So there's a very interesting concept. It's not in the Tanya, but I think it's an important closer. Like we observe today in science, there are certain bacterias or diseases that can be dealt with. They have to be engaged with, and then they can be systematically destroyed. There are other types of bacteria where the only way to kill them is to starve them. You can't engage. You can't grant the energy. And by virtue of the lack of energy, they cease to exist. In the same way, the Jew's relationship with the world at large has two components. There are certain, I'm calling them bacteria for lack of a better word, but there are certain unholy things that we're meant to treat. Those are the things that we have to engage with. A kosher steak, as we're going to see next week, we're supposed to eat it and enjoy it and use it for a holy purpose. But then there are other things where the Torah says engaging with it is not going to help. You need this negative force to die. And the only way the negative force to die is if it's starved from Jewish energy. By the holy energy not communicating with it, it'll wither and ultimately cease to exist.
What's an example?
Non-kosher food, forbidden stuff, these fruits, these orla fruits. The Jew's job here is to disengage. And the disengagement is itself the recipe that we're supposed to engage in for these things. And there's no other way for a Jew. No Jew should convince or try to convince themselves that there's another way to go about it with that. No, I'll do some non-kosher money and then I'll give it to tzedakah, right? Doesn't work that way. The things that we're meant to disengage from, we have to disengage from. As the Rebbe would often say, people think Saturday is a lucrative day for business, and it looks like the retails make more money on those days, but in the end, the extra money that's made will be spent in the wrong places. Hashem has a way of working it all out. It's not a threat, it's a natural consequence. You make more money here, but then there's more doctor bills. That's what the Rebbe would often say. I'm going to read you a letter. It was just released this week. You wouldn't believe, there's so many letters from the Rebbe that have not yet seen the light of day. This is a copy of the actual letter. It's from 1958.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah. Typed on the paper. This is the way it used to be, in the onion paper, the typewriter, the whole thing. You can see the Rebbe's edits on it, actually. Here's the pen marks. You can see some of the Rebbe's edits. That's how it would work. The secretary would dictate, secretary would type it up, and he would edit it, sign it, and send it off. So people, these are personal letters. Obviously, you can see the top. You see the name is covered. They put a piece of tape to cover the name, so you don't have, you keep that element of privacy. But the content is relevant for everybody. So people are slowly but surely over the years allowing their archives to be published. And so this just came out this week. And there are many letters like this. I just chose this one because I came across it just now, and I like when Hashem sends me, a timely message. But the Rebbe firmly believed in these truths that lie at the core of the universe, and he always made sure to communicate them when people were in doubt or on the fence about engaging in something forbidden by the Torah. The Rebbe always returned to the point that Torah is the Torah of life, and if it's the life of a Jew, that means that is the way to life. There's no other way. So here the Rebbe is addressing a father who his daughter wanted to be drafted into the Israeli army. Now, according to Jewish law, it's forbidden for a woman to serve in the army. So the Rebbe writes, he says, I got your letter with all the details about your older daughter. And he says, it's obvious. The Rebbe always came from this premise of the Torah reality is what's obvious. He didn't have the klipa, you understand? There was no peel. He saw the world as it was. So he writes from that perspective. It's obvious that every Jewish girl who is called the daughter of Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah is included in the verse that says, Kol kevuda bas melech penima. The honor of a princess is to remain inside. Which means, since every Jewish girl is in the category, that means that you, as the father, and anybody else who holds sway over her, should try to have her arrange her affairs in a way that will match the lifestyle of a princess who remains inside. And it's certainly impossible to have her arrange her life in a way that would be opposite to the laws of our Torah, the Torah of life. And since every Jew is one big body, we're all composites of one body, and we kind of guaranteeing each other, if she really wants to serve our nation and bring good to our nation, physically and spiritually, she needs to arrange her life specifically in a way that's aligned with the Torah. Because anytime you transgress a commandment of the Torah, it's causing damage and destruction not just to the person transgressing, but to the entire nation. Like the Midrash says, the story of the boat, right? Guy went on the boat, and he was digging a hole by his seat because he wanted to see the fish. And the other passenger said, what are you doing? He says, what do you mean? I paid for my seat. It's my seat. I can do whatever I want in this boat. And they said, you idiot. We're all going to sink if you drill this hole. That's the Midrash's metaphor for when a Jew gives in to his animal soul's desires. Says the Rebbe further, there are those that make mistakes, and they go in the opposite way. They behave against the Torah because they believe that they're bringing benefit to themselves or to others as well. But, says the Rebbe, that can be compared to somebody who works on Shabbos or Yom Kippur. The same work, this is how a Jew works. A Jew has a dual reality. The same work, which had it been done on a weekday, would bring tremendous benefit. So this guy says in his own mind that if it works on a weekday, why shouldn't it work on Shabbos or Yom Kippur? Says the Rebbe, we don't know why. But the creator of the world, the master of the universe, has told us that desecrating Shabbos and Yom Kippur damages the person desecrating and damages the entire nation. And had the Jewish people had the authority, now we don't. But when the Jewish court was in session, it's the obligation of the court to stop the Jew from desecrating Shabbos the same way you would stop a person who wants to commit suicide. And that's how we have to look at every single avera, every single transgression. Even if it looks like, to human eyes, and even if not for a Jew, for a Gentile it would be the right thing to do, and does bring benefit, for a Jewish person, whatever is against the Torah, not only can it not bring benefit, but it definitely brings destruction and damage. And again, says the Rebbe, if his daughter really wants to serve her homeland and bring goodness to it, she should totally leave the idea of being drafted to the army, which is forbidden according to the Torah. Instead, deal with education and educate the next generation of Jewish people to behave according to the Torah, and that's her path to a most fortunate and wonderful life.
By the way, this is simultaneous interpretation from Hebrew to English.
Yeah, it's in Hebrew. I'm just translating to my best in English. Now, it comes harsh. When you hear it, there's some harsh expressions here.
Is drafting mean drafting to fight, or I mean, there's many positions in the Israeli army that
That's debatable. We could talk about that. I didn't want to get into the weeds on that. I was just bringing the background.
Got it.
No, she wanted to be drafted onto the front. What's the point I'm making with this letter? It's just one example of many, and I just chose this one not for a particular reason, simply because it came to my attention this week. This is part of the power of Klippa. Part of the power of Klippa is that it distorts the reality in which we don't see. Why working on Shabbos is any less beneficial than working on the weekday. We don't see it. In temple times they did, by the way. In book 3 of the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe talks about the fact that in temple times, Jews walked around and saw godliness. You saw reality. You put on tefillin, you saw the effect. You didn't do the right thing, you saw the effect as well. Today we don't. But we have to know the truths.
If somebody disgraced Shabbat on that time, he get punished right away?
Right away. Doesn't exist today. Because we're not living in that model of reality. But we have to know the truths. And be in touch with it to the point that it should affect, like you said before, in baby steps, our lives. To less engage with those levels of Klippa. To less engage with those forces that are at the very bottom of the hierarchy of creation. And that's why when Mashiach comes, it says there's not going to be any more death. Bila hamaves lanetzach. Death will be swallowed forever. Why? Why is one of the hallmarks of Mashiach's time death be swallowed forever? Because the whole principle of death was brought about by the klippas. Only when you have a shell covering the fruit does it lead to mortality. Because godliness is eternal. Infinity is timeless. When you superimpose a covering on top of that, well, that's got to die. And when we kill all the things that have to be killed, not actively, I'm saying when we starve all the negative forces that have to be starved, when we abstain from all the proper things that we have to abstain from, and thereby let all those klippas wilt and wither to their death, then we have the cosmic lack of death. Then all we're left with is the true living organisms, the soul and Hashem, which will be revealed when Mashiach comes. L'chaim. Beautiful.